Good afternoon and blessings. You know, I thank God every day for this opportunity to share knowledge with you. And I'm always reminded of the scripture, Hosea 4:6, that says, "My people will perish for lack of knowledge." And that buttressed by the other scripture that says, Romans 12:2, that says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And I'm suggesting that's what, for that to happen, one has to be informed. Now, that's me, according to Ruby. Y'all know me. I'm Ruby Williams Shivers, the unapologetic amateur, looking for experts. And what I promise you I would do every time is explain what I mean by amateur versus expert. But I want to first thank this great brother, Norm, for the space he provides me to share this knowledge with you. And, of course, my crew, producer Lulu Salvador, Sheila Brown Bird, and my advisor who's missing today, Juanita McClure. And I'm excited about my co-host for the month, Professor Kenyatta. He's a professor at Lehigh University and Northampton Community College, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He is an author of 3 books. Black Folks, what's the name? Oh, did I miss something? Yes, I did. I knew I would. Black Folks Here. His second book, The 7 Most Dangerous Pitfalls Threatening Your College Success. And the third book, The White People Show, How to Understand Racism and Still Be Wrong. Powerful analysis. You know, my latest book, Why Shouldn't I Cry? Ode to the Black Man, has a big influence on how I operate my show. I'm sure you noticed that I have mostly male men representing, but that's my concentration. Of course, I'm not forgetting our black females, but I think we always been the backbone for lifting, supporting, and exposing the greatness of our black men, males. That's for good reasons. And my first book, Verbal Healing, We Must Reject Tired, Trite, Tasteless, and Other Nonsensical Expressions That Keep Us Damaged, is what propels me to insist that we develop and create our experts to bring some sense to our situation. Of 400 years of matter of fact, 401 years of a history unlike any other history in the annals of history. So when I declare that I'm an amateur looking for experts, I mean in the area of what I call Africanism. We have a lot of experts in different areas, different fields, different disciplines. But that's not why I have used this. Well, that's why I used this pandemic, if you notice, as an example, as the analogy. Now, I'm not debating the politics of it one way or the other, but as a bona fide fact that killed over 2 million people, we know right away that it required experts in that area of study. You know, the epidemiologist, the virologist, or whoever. And the ones who can study, identify, diagnose, create a solution for this specific illness. Likewise, 401 years of what I call the African slave virus 401, something tells me we need a similar kind of concentration. So my guest today, the great Dr. Akil Kokaya Kalfani, has an extensive bio. I don't really know what to elaborate on it, but what attracted me most, the very last sentence that says, his areas of expertise are African studies, race relations, social stratification, and developing solution for social problem. Now that word, solution, remember, I just mentioned my first book, Verbal Healing, the expressions I list in my book that we find ourselves repeating. You know, we are our worst enemy. We don't stick together. We are making excuses. We are hating ourselves. We are like crabs in the barrel. Those are illusions, syndromes that experts like Dr. Kalfani going to develop solutions for. So I hope these examples give you a better idea of the concept amateur versus expert in Africanism. We have experts, we have potential experts too, just minutes away. But as with other disciplines, we need to define and set up a curriculum specific for that discipline, Africanism. Now, I, the amateur, have some suggestions. Matter of fact, I've created a 7-point plan to create a curriculum. One would be, if you want to study in my place of learning, study the history of the African from the inception of their existence. Among other things, you'll learn that they are the original people. Then number 2, study the maintenance of the African society throughout their history. Now there again, the evidence would show that Africans were highly skilled before their capture. Greatest scientists, greatest mathematicians, builders of the pyramid, etc. Number 3, study the interruption of the African society by interlopers, enslavers, and dehumanizers. You know, then you will see that the evidence will show that European scientists created false images of us as savages, subhuman, etc. Number 4, study the history of our enslavement throughout the diaspora. The physical. You study the rape, the murder, the hanging, the beatings, etc. And mentally, you will study the brainwashing, the mental illnesses, psychological damages. Now, number 5, study the many ills and maladies and syndromes as a result of that experience. The Willie Lynch syndrome, the Stockholm syndrome, the abusive child syndrome, hate thyself syndrome, other ills like high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, death in childbirth, disproportionate in everything, wealth, education, And number 6, there would be a diagnostic point to it as a means for treatment. Number 7, we would develop solutions. As with the brother that I have on now, talks about the solution he developed for what he's studying. That's what we always need to an end to whatever we're studying in regards to what we went through for the 200 years of untold misery. Can't even describe it. I don't even want to say slavery anymore because it doesn't define totally what we went through compared to others. Because people will easily say, well, there's been other people in slavery, and they're right. But that's not what we went through. We went through something so horrific that there's not a definition for it now. We're coming up with one. My offer come to mind. And I'm going to have my co-host again, because he always knows the person behind that expression. But that better defined because it's horrific. And one of the things that I suggest as going forward is that we need something other than just knowing our history. We need the mandatory study of it from kindergarten onward. The mandatory teaching of African people prior to any interruption of our lives pre-slavery. The mandatory teaching of American history as it relates to the African who were brought over here and became property throughout the diaspora. The established learning centers, schools, colleges that are set up specifically for a new curriculum called or entitled Africanism, comprised of subjects, like Egyptology, African anthropology, African religiosity, African linguistics, African enslavement, African discrimination, African racism, the effect of all these maladies, and study diagnostic treatment. Now, this is just the start. Right now, I bring my good brother, the co-host, Brother Kenyatta, Professor Kenyatta. Welcome. Come on in. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Sister Ruby, and to your guests, good to be with you again. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, 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 yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. While waiting for my guest, I want you to. Someone asked me last time you was on. They said, "What's the name of your latest book?" So please give some information about your latest book and where they can purchase it, and they're interested.
Ah, my latest book is entitled The White People Show: How to Understand Racism and Still Be Wrong About It. And you can find it on my website, kenyataspeaks.com, or you can go directly to Amazon. It's on Barnes and Nobles, is on all of the ebook outlets and so forth, as well as Barnes and Nobles, and in bookstores just about everywhere. And I'm actually reworking that book, and I'm going to have a workbook to go along with it. But it's there, it's available. The
Okay.
White People Show.
Okay. Now, since our kids are going back to school now, I see your second book was the seven more most dangerous pitfalls threatening your college success. Tell us a little about that.
Yes, I wrote that book several years ago. It came out of what was happening in my college classrooms. I saw that students were making mistakes that were common, that's what I thought was common knowledge, that was jeopardizing their grades, and they did not, or they were not aware that these things were affecting their grades. So I point out some of the things that they can do to elevate their grades in college, in their college classrooms, things that they can do. And the primary thing that they need to do is establish a relationship with their professors. And that's the one thing a lot of students don't do. They kind of hide themselves in the classroom. It's the worst thing that they can do. But there are several other tips and tidbits in that book that are available to help students. And I guarantee if they use it, they're going to soar.
Okay. What has been the response of students after they have read your book?
Oh, the response has been very, very good. It's been worldwide, actually, students, because it's for undergrads, but it's also for students who are looking to get into college, because most of the students that were initially reading it or coming in contact were already in college. They were almost in their junior year, only like about 2 years left,
Mm-hmm.
but it helped them. But the students who come in on the ground floor, they come in with a whole different kind of mindset. And I've gotten a lot of responses about that. And I speak about that. I haven't spoken in quite some time. I used to speak at college, the programs that they have during the summer before school, before colleges get started.
Mm-hmm.
I've taught classes on it actually at Northampton Community College. They had a class for entering students, acclimating them to the college environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's been well received.
Well, that's great. That is always great. Always good information to give our young people because sometimes they go in blinded. They don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And I write it, particularly as an African person, I write it from the perspective of myself being a student
Right.
and the things that I encountered. I also, while I was in undergrad and graduate school, and I also write it from perspective of a professor, and that's the unique aspect of this book. It's written from the point of view of a professor and what students can do to improve their chances of not just making good grades, but making the top grades in their class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes we need legs up on some of this stuff. I know when I came up from Florida, the very segregated South, uh, just very intimidated by what I was going into. Seton Hall University, I
Mhm.
just was so sure that everybody knew much more than whatever I was thought I knew, coming from a segregated school system. I found
Mhm.
that that was a little bit different from what I anticipated. I am so pleased to see our guest here, Dr. Kenyatta. Uh,
Okay, good.
Dr. Calfani. I'm so honored that you would accept the invitation, no less. My show is a fairly new one, and I just showed that what it does shows your humility. I have some questions for you, but talk about what you want to talk about. But right now, it's interesting that Brother Kenyatta, he comes, I read some of his bio, and he wrote a piece on the affirmative action in South Africa. And I got to think that was some time ago, probably. And here today, we're in the middle of affirmative action in America. You know, how you like that? So if you want to just say hi to everybody and talk about that for a minute, I appreciate it so much.
Yes, indeed. I'm so glad to be here. And, you know, it's a beautiful opportunity to come and share with you. And I see my brother there. I greet you. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, brother. Good to see you again. Hear your
Yes.
voice. Hear you sound like you're strong and healthy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're striving to do the work of the people.
Right.
Okay, now, first I want to read your bio.
Okay.
He's got a lengthy bio, but he's a lengthy person. He does so many things, and it's one of the at the very end that caught my attention. All this caught my attention, but something that I'm gonna ask him about after we get through the end of it, because my show is entitled "We." I'm an unapologetic amateur looking for experts. And you all know I have to define that concept each time I come on because I want to be clear what I mean by amateur versus expert. You know, we have a lot of experts in different areas. I'm talking about an expert that I have all now included in my vocabulary, Africanism. Well, it's already there, but I picked it up to point out what I mean. Expert in Africanism, expert in those who have studied, have diagnosed, and presented solutions. So, brother, when I read this piece, what you said on the end of your piece, it says his areas of expertise are African studies, race relations, social stratification, and developing solutions. I got to stop right there to social problems.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's what I consider an expert, not just to learn about our situation. I tell everyone every day, I'm an expert in living black. I live black every day, but I'm not an expert in black living. Black living consists of so many areas that you got to study in order to get us where we need to be. Where we need to be is to get solutions to some of these, what I call syndromes that we have developed over the 200 years of what I will not call slavery because it's something so different from what we know as slavery, you know. But that period of 200 years, in addition to the addition of 200 years of Jim Crowism and racism, is something that no one has ever experienced in the annals of history like we have. So we need experts who will study it, who would diagnose it, who would then find solutions. And I make the analogy of the virus. You know, when my book came out, that was just at the onset of that virus. And I said, well, God must have said something for me because I knew what I wanted to say. I wanted to, but I was not able to in a short time because people got confused when I say expert. Well, this person is an expert. I'm not trying to dismiss anybody's area of learning. But if you're an expert in Africanism, that's different than being an expert in epidemiology.
That's right.
So that's what I'm trying to convey. And when I read this, you said you have developing solutions. That just picked my mind. I said, oh, that's what we need. Let me get here and try to read some of this good stuff about the brother, Dr. Akil Kakaya Kalfani. Now, I'm saying it right?
Kokayi Kalfani.
Oh, Kokayi. I knew I was doing something
That's okay.
wrong. Is a change agent, motivational speaker, ambassador, author, professor, and award-winning TV host. He is director for the Center for Global Education and Experiences, director of the Africana Institute, associate professor of sociology, and chair of the Social Justice Council at Essex County College. He also serves the college as the coordinator of the sociology program and the co-coordinator of the Africana Studies program, and previously served as the director of the Urban Issues Institute. He is the author of The Hidden Debate, The Truth Revealed About the Battle Over Affirmative Action in South Africa and the United States, which was nominated for the National Oliver Cromwell Cox Award by the American Sociological Association. He is the co-author of Introduction to Sociology, Understanding Our Complex World, and he's a contributing author to many other books. I won't even read them, but he is. And his community service efforts have been honored on numerous occasions. He was awarded the Lifetime Services Award from the West Orange African Heritage Organization in 2022 and the Changing Our Community Award in 2021 by Eyes Wide Open Hope in 2019. Dr. Kalfani was selected as a Presidential Elevate Fellow for the Council on International Educational Exchange. Dr. Kalfani was a candidate for the U.S. Congress. We hope that he'll try it again. Congress representing New Jersey, 10th Congressional District in 2022. Now, he recently founded Vote Education, a nonprofit organization dedicated to voter education. Dr. Kalfani is the host and executive producer of The Pulse, a televised talk show that explores the diversity of the African global experience since 2011. I'm sorry. Now, that TV program won the Total Faith 2021 Media Award. Now, he's appeared on several documentaries, including Searching for Shaniqua and others. Right now, he's the president of the West Orange African Heritage Organization. Ambassador Kalfani was an advisor to the UNESCO Center for Global Education. Dr. Kalfani has curated numerous art exhibitions and installations. I could go on and on and on. Dr. Kalfani earned a PhD and a master's degrees in sociology from the University of Pennsylvania, from which he also earned a graduate certificate in African studies. While living in South Africa, wow, that's impressive, he studied at the University of Pretoria as part of his graduate study. He earned his bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of California, Santa Cruz. His areas of expertise are Africana studies, race relations, social stratification, and developing, the word I like, solution to social problems. Welcome, my brother.
Yes, thank
Let's
you, Mama. I appreciate you. I'm excited to be here. You know, this is, I like the theme that you have, because I think that when we really understand who we are in this world, that we're all striving to learn more, because what we know, the more you know, the less you know. So I know that even though I've studied a lot, I've been a lot of places, I only know just a tip of the information that's out there available for me to know. And so, you know, we can cover whatever you want to talk. If you want to talk about the book, I can talk about that some, and then we can go into a couple other things.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
So
and I want to talk too about the present situations that we are confronting now, the affirmative action and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and I'll do that as partially as a way to getting into the book.
Okay.
So the book really is what I was doing was trying to develop a pathway to understand how affirmative action impacted us as people of African descent, and how white supremacy was impacting us, and how do we find solutions out of those challenges, right? And so then one of the things that I learned over the years is that part of the reason why we don't get to solutions is that we start too close to where we are. And so in this book, I take us all the way back. I go back thousands of years and say that if we Africans like we say we are, then we got to start in Africa.
Exactly.
For everything that we talk about developing a solution for, we got to start in Africa.
Got to start there. Got to start there and go through. I have the amateur here in me.
Yes.
Figured out a 7-point plan, and I want you to listen to it, because what I say is that there are ways that we can get to where we need to get to once we understand that we need to get there. First of all, I don't see it right now, but we need to start from a point. Like you say, we start from where we came, from Africa. And then we get through where we were invaded. Who invaded, why they invaded.
And when they invaded.
Exactly. Then we get through the Middle Passage and coming through that scene.
Yes.
Then we get through the enslavement.
Yes.
Getting on the blocks and being sold and bought by the highest bidder.
Well,
then after the excruciating pain of 200 years of untold cruelty, you know, something got to be done. So
I tweak it just a little bit from there, though, because I say we have to look at, in fact, they just found human remains of Africans, or not just, maybe about 5 or 10 years ago, in Brazil for Africans that were 8,000 to 9,000 years old. So that's just a touch scratching of the surface of us being here as African people, right? And so there's a bunch of brothers and sisters now who've been doing some research on the folks they're saying they're Native American or they're indigenous folks, right? They're Aboriginal to this land, and I understand their point. But however, the people who came here came from Africa, right? So the earliest so-called Native Americans, before the ones who came over on the Bering Straits, there were a group of Africans here, but they had some conflict with the other indigenous folks. So there's two sets of indigenous folks here in the Americas. And I think we got to look at it that way. And then when we talk about us getting here, what are all the things that we brought? So they try to cover up all that early history. So I've been doing some research recently looking at the early history of Africans to the Americas. Right. And that piece, when we combine that with the European slave trade, right, and the torturous way that they tried to influence us into thinking that we were something other than what we were, and something other than what we are, then we began to start unraveling it, right? Because we got to see that their approach was and is about, as Malcolm said, putting the chains on behind your eyes,
and
right?
That's worse.
Exactly.
Now, my brother Kenyatta, did you have a question for Dr.
Well, I was going to say in terms of the comment, can you all see me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
I can't see you all. I don't see you all.
Oh, you really? Oh.
Okay, I just see like the name of the station there. But anyway, that's fine. I was going to say in terms of what the brothers doing, it's so critical that we start with Africa. And one of the pieces that I'm concerned with is the problem with Black History Month. One of the problems is we don't look back enough at Africa. We're centered not too much in this situation, but after the enslavement, as opposed to what went on before, because we're very, very old people. And to hear you say that about the Brazilian piece, I'd like to get some more information about that. Those findings that have been done there. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I'm still trying to get more of the information myself, but I think that there's starting to be more information unraveled, right? And as we look at all the different pieces, then we have to begin to dictate for ourselves. So one of the things in the hidden debate that I talked about is that part of there's when we're trying to understand the conflict between Africans and Europeans, we oftentimes look at the word equality, right? So we look at the word freedom, we look at the word justice, but we look at them from a European perspective. And so then when I was doing the research, everyone kept saying that these are universal concepts. And what I finally found out is that they're actually not, because they're based on worldview. And an African worldview is different than a European worldview, right? And so if we base our understanding on what we're talking about from their European worldview, then we're going to be stuck on their definition and striving to get what they're creating for us, which is another form of enslavement, another form of subjugation. And so we've got to define for ourselves what it is that we want in this life and how we're going to get to it and how we're going to shape that experience after we get there.
Right, and that takes restructuring our way of thinking, as you said, because the definition from, even when I talk about slavery and how we need to redefine that word, like our Jewish friend, they have the word Holocaust, and it's just exclusive for them because they know that was a period of what they suffered. Well, we allow people who have defined our existence here to say, well, slavery, now we know that they're counting everything as slavery. They say, well, you enslaved yourself. Or there's other folks being enslaved as we speak. And there's other, but it's not the kind of slavery, it's not what we went through.
Right, it's not chattel slavery.
It's unique in that the degree of suffering is nothing that I've ever read in the annals of history that compared to it. So if it doesn't compare to it, then it must be that we was done differently than anyone else in the world in any time. So we need to get a word.
Well,
find
they
something.
use that word ma'afa.
Ma'afi,
Yeah.
ma'afa, but and that's good because it's genocidal.
Mhm.
But I say so we need to establish that as our own.
Mhm.
Don't allow them to get away with calling it slavery when it wasn't.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? We were enslaved, but
Yeah.
what we went through for the 200 years was something much different.
Yeah, I say that we've got to get polite when we talk to we try to comfort Europeans when we talk. So I say that we need to talk about all of it, and we need to say that there was the torture and torment. There was rape and all kinds of sexual abuse.
Right.
There was that their actions were savagery, right? So that they talked about us as heathens, but if you look at the word heathen and you look at their actions were heathenists, right? So we've got to call it in them what it was. I never say the Atlantic slave trade because the Atlantic Ocean didn't enslave anyone, right? It was Europeans, and before the Europeans, it was the Arabs, right? So you have two huge moments of African subjugation and torture and torment by two groups of people, and that thinking has prevailed over time.
Right.
And we've got to find a way to unravel that. And I think the solution, part of the solution to that, is that when we look at these words, the ones that I talked about in the book, liberty, equality, and justice, we actually have to look at them simultaneously. I say we have to have synergy between those concepts, right? So that liberty, you can't have liberty without justice. You can't have justice without equality, or someone may say equity. And those three things, I developed a pyramid analysis to kind of look at them. And if you're looking at one, then what happens is the ugly head of the other pops itself up in it. So if you don't have equality, you can't get justice, right? Because inequality is where where injustice sits, right? And lack of freedom is where so oppression is where inequality and injustice sits. So therefore we have to fight on all those fronts simultaneously.
And when you say that, what you think about this? Don't you think that requires a concentrated effort of us getting together as other disciplines have gotten together and specify what it is that we want to study? Because everybody can't study the same thing. And if I study something and don't know how to go forward and get solution for it, that means I just studied it. You know.
Right.
So I'm saying it seems to me that we as African people now should organize around a curriculum that would define just exactly what we need to become experts. You know, we can study, but it seems to me with what we've gone through, worse than any virus that you ever encounter, and I use this virus that we recently, 2020, first time any of us had ever, my grandchildren wouldn't say that. They said, "Mom, Nana, were you back there?" So they assumed I was back there. But the virus that none of us had seen over 100 years. So we realized right away, we didn't go around looking for entertainers, we didn't go around looking for a sports figure, we didn't go around looking for even intellectual, we didn't go around looking for Harvard graduate. They thought that they needed someone specific who had studied that virus and come up with the solution. So wouldn't we, particularly what we went through, was worse than a virus. So we would need to create a curriculum for our specific ails, the syndrome that we had, all that stuff that we went through. It seemed to me we need to start developing. And I know we have the experts, they just wouldn't allow. They don't allow our experts to come forward with anything other than what they want us to hear, a Clarence Thomas of the world, people like that. But we have people who have studied it. Study us specifically. My book here, Verbal Healing. We must reject tired, trite, tasteless, and other nonsensical expressions that keep us damaged. Speak to that. That's what my show is all about. One of the reasons I got this show. I want to continue to educate our people on what we are not. We complain sometimes, we condemn ourselves, and we denigrate ourselves, and we say, well, we're not this and we're not that. But that all come out of that brainwashing, all come out of the abuse, physical and mental, that we've suffered over those 401 years. I call it the African slave virus 401, according to Frick. So I'm saying, don't you think we need to think seriously about creating schools or educational processes to have us to concentrate on that specific reality. 'Cause
No,
that,
we definitely we have to have a holistic. I always say we have to have a holistic approach to our problems or to our
Right, right.
challenges. So we have to have schools. We have to have our own systems of healing.
Yeah.
We have to have our own systems of own dietary structures and conditions. We have to have our own. We have our own ways of dealing with each other from a legal process,
Yeah.
even. And so we want to attribute everything to these European ways of doing and thinking, and I think that undermines what you're talking about. So if we really want to change things, then we've got to get to a place when we're talking about schools that we look at educating ourselves for ourselves first. You know, Carter G. Woodson, I think your brother mentioned about, somebody mentioned about Black History, right, in African History Month. The thing is that Carter G. Woodson actually suggested to us or instructed us to spend that week and then later the month reflecting on what we did over the other 11 months,
Right.
So we think we have the shortest month. No, that month is for reporting back what you did for 11 months. So we have our own our own confusion about it. And the biggest disease actually there is that we need an inoculation for is white supremacy. White
Right.
supremacy is the virus.
But I, as an amateur, don't know that. Other folks don't know that. Same as this, I use the analogy of the virus. There were things that we may know not to do or to do. Okay, I could take an aspirin. But when it came to curing that particular virus, we went to the expert. So we need to congregate our people to a point that they will know we need specific, how can I put it, people, for lack of a better word.
No, I agree.
To
But-
make the analogy of what you just said, because I wouldn't know that. You know that. You probably know. Say, well, if we got together with some other ones of my friends and we come up with some solution to this syndrome, Willie Lynch syndrome. I may have the Willie Lynch syndrome, but I would not know the cure for the Willie Lynch syndrome. So we should think in terms of developing cures for what we know ails us as African people, without putting it on me or putting it on someone who hasn't studied, who don't know it, how to do it, where to do it, and when to do it.
So I'm part of a group called AYA, which they have a whole package called Ngolo. And we have regular meetings, and one of the things we talk about is that we need to be warriors, healers, and builders. And so part of what you're talking about is having different people in places to bring those things to bear, right? So if we only see, if we say we have an enemy, and the enemy is Europeans or white supremacy or whatever it is that our capitalism, whatever we see as the enemy that we're kind of projecting out there is, then you can't just be a warrior, and because if you're a warrior doesn't transition well into a builder, right? And so if a warrior is involved in war, that means that something's going to get damaged. That means some people are going to get hurt. That means there's going to be lots of that means there's going to be lots of different things going on. And so then you got to heal the people, right? And so then you have to be thinking in that way, warrior, healer, and builder. And so then that where you're going to get your lawyer from. That's where you're going to get your accountant from. That's where you're going to get your doctor from. And we had lots of folks who had lots of intelligence about that, not just the pharmaceutical industry, but people that brought in great insights, looking at using, for instance, some of the folks, and even in Madagascar and other places, they were talking about using Artemisa. They were talking about using a whole set of mullein and for clearing up the lungs, a whole set of simple, easily accessible, affordable, non-vaccine oriented approaches to resolving the problems dealing with COVID and anything else. And so there was those people were there, but some of our people are so attached to this Eurocentric way of thinking that they only believe that the pharmaceutical industry had the solution.
But see, that's part of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We know those things.
Yeah.
Those are syndromes, obviously, right? Whatever happened to us over the 200 years created that mindset.
Yes.
Your ice is colder than mine and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So what I'm saying, we need to just listen to what I figure the amateur was doing. If I had my way, I would create this curriculum and have to build me a school. Study the history of the African from the inception of their existence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, amongst that, you would find, among other things, you learn that they are the original people.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us don't know that. We may say that or may hear that, but if we had an expert out there with a particular discipline,
Mm-hmm.
say if I had to go to school for epidemiology, I knew I had to study certain things to become the epidemiologist. Well, I want us to have something as specific as that for us as Africans to study. Africanism, let's call it Africanism.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you would study the history of the African people from the inception of their existence. Among other things you will learn is that they were the original people. A lot of folks don't know that. Then number 2, study the maintenance of the African society through the history.
Mm-hmm.
We were great people doing a whole lot of things before we even came out here. The evidence would show that Africans were highly skilled before their capture. Greatest scientists, greatest mathematicians, builders of the pyramid, etc. Number 3, study the interruption of the African society by interlopers, enslavers, and dehumanizers. Because there were those, evidence would show that European scientists created false images of us as savages, subhuman, etc. Number 4, I said I would study the history of our enslavement throughout the diaspora. These physical, rape, murder, just like you said, hanging and beatings, and the mental, the brainwashing, the mental illnesses, psychological damage. Then number 5, I studied the many ills and maladies, syndromes, as a result of that experience. We suffer from the Willie Lynch syndrome, Stockholm syndrome, abusive spouse syndrome, hate thyself syndrome. Some of us hate the skin color out here. Well, I know we can criticize and we can condemn, but those folks are suffering from that, so they need more than criticism and condemnation. We need, as when we develop your expert, you need to tell us how to do and how to come out from under that, to provide solutions for us. Then we suffer from high blood pressure, all kinds of diseases. We're disproportionate in health, wealth, and other things. Why? We weren't like that coming over from Africa. And number 6, we need to diagnose each as a mean of treatment. Diagnose them. Once we figure out what's happening with us, diagnose them, because we can always say, poo-poo it. My brother and I get together and I talk about brainwashing. He swears he's not brainwashed. I say everybody under this system, to one degree or another, been brainwashed.
Yeah.
So we got to train him, teach him somewhere. I don't know, but
So
you experts will.
On that one right there, I
Uh-huh.
would say that we actually haven't been brainwashed. We've been brain dirtied.
Right.
See, even using the
Right,
word
right.
brainwashing is
Mhm.
brainwash.
Exactly.
Because washing means to clean.
Clean, exactly.
So if it was washed, then we'd be okay.
Right.
But they've been brain dirtying
Dirtying
us
us.
to make us think things
Yeah.
are on good and proper.
Right.
But in fact, they've been negative for us,
You
negative for our
just said
health.
it. Those are the kind of things that our expert will be able to get from us, define.
Yeah.
Where I said it that way, you say, no, and then we will understand it differently. Because sometimes when you're telling our people one thing, they say you're just making excuses. But if you explain in a way that makes it sense to them.
Right.
And the last is develop solutions.
Right.
Develop solutions. That's what I want us to come into our own and create schools around that. Well, we have disciplines that those are the curriculum that were required to be considered, broad thinking people who will help us get through whatever we got through. Brother, come on, don't let me just interrupt if you want to. I can talk forever.
Well, I just had a question, observation and a question. I think that we know what the problems are, as you've indicated. The question in terms of the solutions, okay, we know what needs to be done, should be done. The question is, do you have any ideas on how we would communicate this to our people? And we know that we're not going to get the masses. You're never going to get the masses. You need a significant number of people to create a critical mass, and then it'll take care of itself, so to speak. So how do we communicate this? How do we get this message out to a significant number of our people so that we can begin to affect some of these changes, put in place some of the solutions? Any ideas?
I have a couple. One I think, and I organize a program around this every year, and I think we've got to have look at our own spiritual systems. So that we have a wealth of spiritual systems from the continent, from the Yoruba, Isheshe, you got the Congolese systems, you have the Kemetic or Egyptian systems, you have the Abosun, you have the Ghanaian systems. So we have lots of different the Sangomas from Southern Africa. There's a lot of different spiritual systems, and with those come science, right? So that spirituality in the African sense dealt with health, dealt with mental conditions, because if someone is divining for someone, if someone is doing a reading of someone, that it may come up with some medicinal herbs or something that they need to take to address that particular issue. They may tell them that they need a cleansing. They may help them to understand that maybe if someone is having a psychological episode or experience, that maybe that person is in commune with a spirit but didn't know it, right? And so then those kinds of things, I believe, are one of the tools, one of the resources we can look at that helps to bring us to another level, right? That we trust in the things that we've been doing for thousands of years, and our African spiritual systems are thousands and thousands of years old, and we don't want to rely on them because we're relying on somebody else's way of doing and thinking, right?
That is so true.
And then when you were saying, look at the things where the disruptions. I mean, some of those books have already been written, right? It was just about maybe coming up with simpler versions. You got Shakanta Diop wrote Destruction of Black Civilization, African Origins of Civilization. You got Chancellor Williams' books. And all of them, these books talk about the evolution and the bringing together of these ideas and the origin of all the kind of Eurocentric ways of doing and thinking. And I think the brain dirtying is so pervasive that it prevents folks from actually approaching those things and learning them. So I'm having a meeting tomorrow with many of the directors of Africana Studies programs, and I pulled us together to talk about how do we rekindle that energy and spirit that was the impetus that brought those centers into being, right? That those centers came into being out of the struggles in the 60s and the 50s, and even the 70s. And so some folks now are the directors of those places, but they think they're the director, right? And they're not there. I'm a steward. I'm a caretaker of something that somebody struggled to bring into existence across the United States. And so I'm also working to do the same thing on the continent, right? Because most of the education on the continent, they don't learn anything about African history and culture in the way that we're talking about right now. They know more about Europeans and European history and culture from France and England and Belgium and the United States, Spain, than they do Portugal, than they do if you live in Nigeria. They probably couldn't tell. Usually they can't tell you much about Angola or the Congo or Kenya, because that's not in their collective consciousness and in their educational curriculum. And so I'm striving and working with some of folks to push the agenda so that we extend that level of analysis, so that we are Pan-Africanist first, right? And so if we start thinking and doing Pan-Africanism first, then I think we change the foundations of what we do.
That's what I mean by getting a cadre of people together.
We are.
And that's a good idea. That's what I envision. Because without that, we're just going to be willy-nilly, everyone thinking on their own and thinking they know what they know, and they don't know what they know. And as with anything else, you concentrate the people who have done the work, studied from Africa, the inception of Africa to where we are now, and come up with what they think may be solutions to those things. And as a result of it, get together the group, because we can't do things singularly. As a group, develop something the same as I'll make an analogy to this virus. Same as those folks get together and study specifically. And they are the ones that come up with answers of may be acceptable sometime, it may not. But at least they are the one responsible we look for to come up with the answer. So one day we're going to get a group of you all together, like what you're trying to do, that's going to create a curriculum and a system that says this is Africanism, this is what you got to do to try to get our people straight from all these syndromes that they've been through and all the lack of the illnesses that they've suffered over time in this country and stuff. I just want to holler out to some of my people. So good to see you. Aaliyah Bay, thanks for listening. Rose Cabbage Stock, hey, share it for me. Stephanie, thank you so much. Juanita, just keep it rolling and share. Okay, Brother Kenyatta. Are you
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I think that pulling together of a people, groups of people, is very important. But Dr. Kalafani just mentioned something that was very important, and that is the work done by Dr. Chancellor Williams in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. Because in the back of that book, he lays out, I mean, pretty explicitly and thoroughly, a plan that we would need to follow. And it's a Pan-Africanist view. We've not implemented it.
Because they won't allow us to get our expert. They will not allow us to have those brains that we need to congregate together on issues around just that Africanism. Not anything,
well, I think,
just how
I think
to
what,
do that.
I think that what we have to do, we cannot depend on them pulling it together. When we go back and look at our history, for example, the people who pulled together the schools, Tuskegee,
Mary McLeod Bethune and the rest of them.
Bethune, they basically pulled together. Of course, they had to have some degree of interaction with the Europeans, but they pretty much made up in their minds, hey, we're going to do it. Now,
Exactly.
if they were able to do what they were able to do with less than what we have now, because we got access to billions of dollars, and it seems that we're doing less, but it has to do with the mindset, and the people in that group that Brother Kalafani was referring to have to have that mind. They have to have that one mind, as Garvey said. We're going to have that one single mind and with a single goal in mind, and no one deters us. And whether they agree with us or not, we still do it.
Move forward, and that's a great idea, because I think it's in the wind that we're going to have something specific that we can look toward, the amateurs of us, that can look toward for our expert to say, okay, this is where we're going with this. We have come together and agreed on these particular, whatever we need to call them. You know, the curriculum would consist of us knowing who we are from the inception to right now, going through the middle passage and all the other stuff. So, but I'm confident. I feel good that this is going to come on. I wouldn't have this show otherwise.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know, we have when we look at the books you were talking, the books we're talking about. You know, there's a series of other books we have as well. You know, there's a series of books that help us to think about how we connect spiritually. Like, for instance, the sister Sabonfun Somé talks about relationships. Right? She has a great book that looks at how we begin to relate to one another and what our relationships are, and that we're once we recognize that we're spiritual beings having this physical experience, then we're tapping into that collective energy of the spirit that comes all the way back from thousands and thousands of years ago. So the elders say that this life is one of remembering, and so if we really recognize it, that we have to that we're remembering in our DNA, we're remembering in our blood, we're remembering through our spirit.
Epic memory.
Exactly. And so all of those things are accessible to us. We just haven't developed or utilized regularly the tools for getting there.
And that's what we need to do. We
Exactly.
need our experts to do that. You know, there's a specific way that any discipline gets going and get you looking at what you're supposed to look at in that particular discipline. And ours should be classified as such. You know, it's not enough. I wrote the book, Verbal Healing. When I wrote the book, Verbal Healing, I knew exactly some of our ills and ailment, but but I didn't know how to go about correcting them. As I said before, when I talked to my brother about brainwash, there's someone, Dr. John Henry Clark, and our brother Calvin Robinson, Dr. Kenyatta, Brother Kenyatta. He would have
Yes.
told us exactly what that brainwashing was all about, right? So we need
Oh,
to
yeah.
get those folks like you all together to create a curriculum specifically for people to go study, not just to study willy-nilly, just say, I'm going to study African history. That's not enough. We need to study the history, study the syndrome that we've gone through, study the ailments that have been caused by slavery, and then try to figure out a solution for those ailments.
Well, we're working on one thing. I'm part of a group that's organizing the 9th Pan-African Congress. It's going to be held in Togo in 2024. So I think that the folks are moving in that direction. Yeah. And it's about us coming together and working to push that the collective energy and spirit to make that happen.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things that I think is important to consider now, and I've been trying to get a handle on it, this situation that's happened in Nigeria. As I'm understanding it, what they're attempting to do is to throw off the European yoke. And there's a little bit of like confusion there, but they're like, hey, we don't want your intervention. We want you out of our affairs. It's basically what I'm understanding them to be saying, and aligning themselves with those other countries. I think what Brother Califani said something just now that triggered that thought in my mind about the Togo piece. We're seeing a movement on the continent of Africa, I think, that is kind of new with that particular situation there. I'm still trying to understand and grasp who is who. And I kind of go by the axiom of what Malcolm X said, when this country says go left, you go right. If they say go up, you go down.
Right.
So when I'm hearing that the United States is supporting a certain kind of thing, I'm like, okay, why is the United States supporting this? Is this what we should be looking at, or should we be looking at the opposite type of thing? I don't know if you all give given any thinking to that.
We definitely should be looking at the opposite, because the U.S. is concerned about that pipeline, right?
Yeah.
There's a pipeline, a gas pipeline that they want completed, and it has to go through Niger to make it happen, and so that's why they're pushing that. Just like Gaddafi was building a water pipeline to give all of Africa water, and of course, what did they do with it? They blew it up. After they killed him, they blew it up. So
this conversation could go on. I just enjoy it. You got to come back, Dr. Califani.
Yes,
got to come back.
We just getting good going right there.
Yes.
Go to church.
Let me just say this just say this very quickly. You can enjoy this. I'm gonna have you back too. You come back this month. You can enjoy this program by listening to BKS1 Radio or seeing me in person on Facebook or YouTube. You can bless this program by sending a donation to Cash App, $ Ruby Shivers, or Zelle Ruby Shivers 158@gmail.com. And you know we got to have these brothers back, because we'll have some deep conversation that I love, that I know will help me explain each time I say I'm an unapologetic amateur looking for experts. Bye-bye.